Sonic Talk.
Hello everybody and welcome to Sonic Talk episode 527, recording today the 14th of March, which actually is fairly close to the Ides of March after my terrible faux pas last week, which Rich very kindly put me right out. Maybe it was a week before, I forget now, but it is now. This is Sonic Talk. It's the show that's dedicated to all things music technology, software, hardware, controllers, DJ stuff, performance, recording studios, live production, all of that kind of stuff. And I want to say thank you very much to our chatties. We've got our YouTube chatties there. Nice to see you all, and also our IRC chatties as well. Want to say thank you also to iZotope for providing the prize today. If you want to stay tuned, you can win an opportunity to or have an opportunity to win iZotope 8, which is their mastering and sort of finishing plugin suite. So stay tuned for that. Right. Oh, that threw me a bit. I hope. This Facebook video streaming thing is a real pain. I have to do it multiple times. Anyway, let's say hello. We'll start actually over here with Mr. Marc Tinley, Sonos Major. He's actually in his shop in Glastonbury, where I think, have you got people beating down the doors, or are you...
Yeah, I've got people beating down the doors, and Michael Tyak from Circulars was just posting £50 notes underneath the door, so that's brilliant, isn't it?
That is great. That's the sort of thing that you could be very easily excused for just... essentially stopping and doing, as I'm sure he did. Marc Tinley runs a kind of boutique and interesting curiosity, musical, electronics and other kind of stuff shop in Glastonbury. You can find out about Sonos Magus. How are you, Marc? Anyway, I haven't seen you for ages.
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been very, very busy doing this, and it makes it more difficult to come on the podcast. But I've just built a new computer for myself, or rebuilt my computer, and got it so that the extension that runs the webcam is now working properly, and it's not doing the weird glitchy graphicy thing that it was doing on this whatever this software we're using is called, vMix Cool. So perhaps you will see more of me. Yes.
Yeah, you're looking, the video is sharp, so you've obviously got a decent bandwidth anyway. Lovely to have you there, Marc. Yeah. And also, let's say hi to Mr. Yoad Nevo, who is in his studio in London, where he produces and remixes and engineers, and also works on developing plugins for Waves. How are you, Yoad?
I'm very well, thank you. And I'm just going to say that my mom is watching, so we have to come up with a really interesting show today. We have a challenge.
Okay. I'm very pleased that your mum... Well, I hope that we can keep your mum interested, though, with you on. She's going to be interested.
Absolutely.
What's your mum into?
Maybe we should give her a wave.
Mainly literature and stuff written in books rather than things with wires. But, who knows?
She might be out of luck in today's shows.
If I see any bards walking past on the high street, I'll drag one in. I could do that.
Excellent. You could give us a bard alert. Okay. Yeah. Well, Yoad, thank you very much for joining us, and it's good to see you. And I see we flipped your view around, and you were telling me, is that that's a? I'm going to sound like I know what I'm talking about, but you actually told me earlier that to your right, or is it your left? There's the Polyvox.
That's my left.
Okay.
On my left, there's a Polyvox. A weird Arturia mini micro, what's it called? Brute, which is like the micro boot is actually, so the keyboard was taken out and the micro boot is just put instead of the keyboard. And the way I have it connected is that the micro boot is actually used as an oscillator. So it has no VCA at all, so it's constantly on. And it's going into the external input on the mini brute. So it's basically a mini brute with two oscillators, essentially.
What you really... It feels like... It's like... I may have said this before, but it's like one of those dishes you get at Christmas, which is a sort of quail inside a chicken, inside a goose, inside a, a turkey.
Exactly.
I think you could probably just about squeeze some kind of Korg... one of the Korg Volkers in there as well, and then you can have it three ways. Maybe you should.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, thank you very much for joining us, Yoad. Lovely to have you. And of course, we have Mr. Rich Hilton, who is here fleetingly because he's in the middle of a big recording project and then off ski, touring everywhere. So it's lovely to have you. How are you, Rich?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Rich, of course, keyboards with Chic, and Nile Rodgers, studio guy, also working on his own production gig right now. How's that going? Where are you? Are you mixing yet, or are you still
No, we're not
arranging?
mixing. Some more recording to do. We're taking a break until May, and then we're going to come back and finish after I finish my first leg of touring.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, it's because you can approach that in different ways, can't you? Do you think that sort of a break is actually quite good because you come back with a fresh perspective and a bit of time to have thought about what you've done, or do you generally prefer to just keep rolling to keep the energy going?
I just generally prefer to finish projects, and however that works is fine with me. But in this case, I'm perfectly happy to avail myself of the opportunity of taking a little time away from it, because I've been at it pretty much nonstop for 2 months. So walking away from it for a while, I'll miss it, and I really will look forward to coming back to it and finishing it. And it's pretty close. A lot of it, it's pretty close. A few things need to be brought along. Yeah.
Excellent. And are you using any synthesizers in this project? And if so, which? There's a question for you.
I've used the Seaboard quite a bit. All the synthesis on this project, I'm trying to make sure that this is accurate, has been software.
Right. Okay.
So far.
All right.
And I can talk about that if you want. But
yeah. What? So have you got a go-to in that sort of for this particular project that you're using?
So far, I've used Omnisphere Falcon, which I'm in love with at the moment, as well as some of their libraries.
That's UVI, isn't it?
I have actually found a use for some Arturia soft synths. What else? I've used Zebra. I've thinking more than one Arturia. I used Absinthe for something on this. I think I used Massive for something on this.
Right. Okay. So selection.
Well, I like solving quote unquote problems with different solutions all the time. I try not to fall into patterns about the way I address a particular musical situation. So I'm constantly looking for new ways to come up with good musical solutions to certain things that I want to get done. So I like looking around, shopping in the old plugins folder and seeing what it'll do.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, often on a project, you kind of create a palette that you would work with. So you might make that palette and use it in the project, but then I mean, that's certainly the way I've sort of worked. Or maybe it's even onto a single track, but it sounds like you're kind of being a bit more free with the creative thinking than I probably would be. So good for you.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about anything other than getting the best possible result, and whatever works right now for that is fine with me. Whatever it's called and whatever it looks like.
Jolly good. There's some ticking in the background somewhere. I'm trying to figure out what that is. Ticking. I can't quite figure it out. I've turned down Marc and I've turned down Rich, but not Rich, but and Yoad, but it didn't seem to make any difference. Anyway, I'm sure we'll survive. So let's have a look at this. This is artificial noise key control. So it's just a little MIDI widget, effectively, that takes a MIDI input, and you can create whatever scale you want on the white keys, and then the black keys become chords, which just seems like, a fairly simple but quite an interesting idea in many ways. And that's kind of it. I mean, there's not much more to it than that, but I'm trying to think. I mean, this could be the sort of thing that might be useful in a live situation where perhaps if keyboards aren't your first instrument, you might actually find that, doing it this way would make it a lot easier for you to navigate around the set. I don't know. Can you think of a use for this, Yoad? Is this something that, I don't know how accomplished you are.
Well, I'm a guitarist, as you know, so I'm not as good on keyboards. I get by. But the thing I was missing on that little device, which seems quite cute, is just a simple transpose. Because this is like the first thing that I play on the white keys. So I just transpose every kind of, I just transpose to C. So I can play C or A minor. And this is something that I'm missing there, and it seems like quite an obvious and
I'm just having a look at that. I don't know whether that knob
I
on the
don't
right
think,
will just
no,
take whatever
because-
scale you're in, and it'll just transpose it from whatever you're playing. Or you have to define it
but
first.
I don't want. I wouldn't want to quantize the scale necessarily. I just would like to
transpose.
a straight
okay.
transpose. But other than that, I think it's really cool. I think it's I would expect to see more devices that manipulate MIDI in real time, because back in the day, and I still have 4 units of, I don't know if you remember it, MIDI timepiece by Marc of the Unicorn, which is a really, really cool kind of MIDI patch and routing and filtering and also converting. So I used to plug in a sustain pedal and convert it to a MIDI note so I could play bass drum and things like that.
Okay, yeah.
That's a unit from the 80s or something like that, and it's still very valid today. And it's quite surprising. And at one point, after switching to PC, I still used the Atari, so the MIDI was going through the Atari, which used to run Cubase, and I don't know if you remember, it has the phrase synthesizer, which was an amazing MIDI kind of manipulator, real-time manipulator. So it was just running through, doing all sorts of arpeggios and things like that. So yeah, it's nice to see a device like that does MIDI manipulation in real time. But I would expect, I mean, since they do have a processor, a real-time processor that kind of can accept the very simple MIDI commands and mess about with them, I would like to see a straight transpose, and that could be good.
Yeah, a lot of keyboards have that built in, I suppose. Marc, this strikes me the sort of thing that would fit beautifully on the shelf in your shop, because it's kind of niche and useful, perhaps, although maybe a bit too niche. I don't know. What do you think?
Isn't this just an Arduino in a box with 2 knobs?
Quite possibly. But I mean, that doesn't mean that doesn't mean it's.
I don't understand it. Maybe it would appeal to somebody that doesn't use a computer to make music, but I've got all of this in Ableton, so I just don't understand it. I kind of looked at it and thought, it's like somebody's presenting this thing and saying, "Look at this new thing," except it's the thing that we've had for like 30 years. So I don't get it.
Maybe so.
Other than that it's standalone, so somebody that doesn't have a computer or doesn't understand how to patch stuff in computers or write, or little kind of transformers in Logic or whatever in Ableton, somebody who doesn't understand how to do that might find this useful. But to me, it's just, I don't know, it just seems like an awful lot of money for something that doesn't really do very much that I can't do already.
I see. That's a very valid point. This is what it looks like. I don't
want to diss it. I love the design of it. I think it looks fabulous. It looks like
just not for you.
That's arrived from the 1970s, doesn't it? But,
yeah, it looks like it's like a C1 or something.
Saying that in a positive way, by the way.
Yeah, Rich.
But
Rich,
no, I don't get it.
You're a keyboardist, so it probably would have had limited use for you. But it looks like it's just. I like the fact that it exists, I suppose. And I wonder if there's other images I can find of it. What do you make of it? Does it have any? I suppose it probably wouldn't be all that useful for you, being an accomplished keyboard player.
We're going to have a get off my lawn moment here. It's stunning to me the lengths to which people will go to avoid actually learning how to understand and play music.
200 euros. That could buy you a few music lessons, I suppose. But yeah, it's technique, isn't it?
It's like it's some sort of impossibly difficult task that isn't worthy of anybody's pursuit anymore, because we can build this box that'll just play chords for you.
Okay.
I was going to tattoo it on my knuckles, actually. I was going to tattoo tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Is that it? That's what it is. Major, isn't it? Am I right, or have I got that wrong?
I think that's about right.
That's correct,
okay, well,
yeah.
maybe we should move on then.
If it was on my knuckles, it would help.
Like I said, get off my lawn moment.
Okay, well,
on the road tonight.
All right then. Well, perhaps that's not such a hit. But if you want to find out, artificialnoise.ca. It's I think $199 or 109. I think you can buy it now, whether you have to pre-order. Shipping in 3 to 6 weeks. But I guess it may well be. What what does that say? €219. Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of money. But if it's what you need, then that is what you need. I suppose you could get someone. You probably couldn't get someone to build you that for that, I guess. But anyway, all right then, we'll move on. How about this? Let's try this one. This is sort of a trailer, but it's essentially a Eurorack case. But it's a Eurorack case which has got a whole load of utilities in it as standard, which I think is actually a really good idea. So you get extra LFOs, you get mults, you get splits, you get attenuators, all that kind of stuff, which I think makes quite a lot of sense to my ears. And again, it's a sort of niche thing. I'm going to go, Rich, you haven't really entered the world of Eurorack or modular, but I mean, one of the things that I always find is, you always think, oh, I haven't got that. Whereas a case that has that built in, I think is actually quite a powerful possibility.
Looks nice. Yeah, you're paying for it, but it looks nice. I mean, in other words, that functionality doesn't come free.
No,
but
sure.
If such is what you need, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't like to have that as part of the case, and unless you've got better ways to do it already.
I think we got 2 joysticks, 3 VC LFOs, 1 sample and hold noise, 2 CV processors, and a VCA. I mean, you can buy all this stuff in other sort of modules that fit in the Eurorack thing, but I think Make Noise did something similar where they've got I forgot what it's called. It's the central bit that fits between the 1U thing, which is a similar, and it's like a busing and a patching system, which again makes certain sense for certain people and certain patches. I don't know, Yoad, is this? I know you've tried, haven't you, with modular, and you've got lots of it. It's just finding the time. Would something like this make it easier for you to take on board?
I think I've said it before. I'm into like a 19-inch kind of rack format, so this is not quite a thing for me. It looks very interesting. It looks very neat. The fact that it's powered, so all you need is to plug a few modules in, and you're good to go. It's quite a neat kind of starting point for someone who's venturing into the modular realm, really. What's something there that I saw, that the LFO ranges from 10 seconds or something to 18 hertz, and it's either a mistake or I'm not quite sure why doesn't it go any faster? I mean, it could be really nice to go up to, I don't know, 5K or something like that to get into audio frequencies, but 18 hertz is a bit of an odd, it's not like, it's kind of fast, but it's not like really fast, so you can't do any FM and things like that with it. It's kind of okay as a traditional, it's like the Gen SX1000 that I have here, which I love the sound of it, but the LFO doesn't really get any nearly as fast as, but it's fine for something from the 70s. But nowadays, I mean, why not make it faster? That's the only comment I have. Other than that, it looks.
I don't know whether that's because cool. I'm looking here and it says certainly they going from almost stop several minutes per cycle into audio frequency range. So
yeah, but on the actual website it says 0.001, which is not seeing that. Which is 10 seconds, which is fine. Up to 18.
I'm just looking. I can't find that.
So either it's a mistype, or it's very strange.
Yeah, the 18 hertz seems a bit. That's isn't 18 hertz the frequency that you use? You get 2 18 hertz and you beat them and you end up with theta waves, which are the things that they used to use in audio warfare.
Yeah, it's like almost like a brown note, isn't it?
The brown note, yeah, something like that. I don't know, Mark. I know you're not into Eurorack, which is surprising, really, because you've got a shop full of kind of interesting kind of electronic stuff. Have you not been tempted? Have you not been tempted to get a bit of Eurorack in?
It's quite a big investment, isn't it, to get like the whole thing going and to decide which modules and everything. I mean, it looks nice. I really like the colours of the graphics on the thing itself. I would want wooden end cheeks on my Eurorack stuff, though. Eurorack seems to me like, like when I was a kid growing up, all my friends' dads had these amazing hi-fis, and they always had like really good wood on them and stuff. And it seemed to be very important to the hi-fi to have wood. And that looks a bit MDF to me, but
yeah, maybe it is.
Maybe we're moving into Marantz territory. I don't know.
I'm just looking at the lovely pictures. It does look
looks
pretty
nice
nice.
on
600.
that,
I mean,
doesn't
it's not the cheapest. It's like €650, but often cases aren't not. I mean, what's the? It's a lot more expensive than the Arturia rack brute, which I think for something of a similar size is only about £220, but it hasn't got any of those utilities. So I suppose it's not so important. But I just thought I mean, I guess the thing is also, I mean, both of these first two topics are really kind of like quite niche, So there are people who are kind of coming up with these kind of solutions to problems within this kind of ecosystem, which I think I quite like that, and the fact that there's that sort of level of innovation, because I mean, as we've seen, in terms of actual synthesis, we're all quite pedestrian when it comes to kind of radical change, but kind of tweaking with what we know and making, maybe that's how you incrementally eventually get a big change.
Partly a clue, isn't it? It is what we know. I think if I knew nothing at all about synthesis and I wanted to get into it, I would get into eurorack. I wouldn't want to learn synthesis on a computer, I don't think. I'd want to be able to get hands-on with it. But because I know how it works, I don't have quite so much kind of drive to have the knobs and buttons in front of me, because I can program some kind of controller to do all that. So I feel like I've got more flexibility by having it in software, but because I can make it do what I want it to do rather than being constrained by the way somebody's designed it. I can design it myself.
Or not having enough modules or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
No, that's true.
If I was beginning and I wanted to have something really cool in my living room that I could make extremely brilliant noises with, and I wanted to know that it was all in the analog world and I could impress I don't know,
people,
other people with it. Yeah. I'd probably buy a whole load of it, but at the moment, it's not.
That's interesting. I don't know. I'm Yoad. I mean, I know recallability and repeatability is quite important in in all of our worlds, and especially in yours where you're running through sessions quick. Have you tried any of the software modular stuff to sort of see whether you can get what you need from that?
I have. Back in the day, I used to use the Creamware modular, the scope modular synth, which was really good.
Yeah,
that was amazing. In general, I mean, all the scope synthesizers back in the day, I think that just now with the Monarch and things like that, you get to a similar kind of quality just from the oscillators. I have to mention the Element 2 in the same breath, but it's like back in the day, it was absolutely amazing. All the synths that were made for the scope platform were absolutely amazing, and the modular included, so that was good. But I don't know, I kind of like the
hands-on aspect of it.
Yeah, in theory, but I don't have time to deal with it because of the recallability and things like that. So maybe, I don't know.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think, if I remember correctly, the scope platform, I don't know if it used Shark or it used Motorola's, but
Shark.
They used Shark chips, didn't it? And that was before, that was when those specialized DSPs were way streets ahead for real-time processing against what you could actually do in your regular computers.
And also, exactly, because everyone were using DSP at the time, which was fixed point, and the Shark is floating point, which gave it 32-bit floating point in the kind of late 90s and early 2000s, which gave it enormous headroom. And I still have one machine here, which is a scope machine, which has all the synths and stuff, and I'm not using it because life is too short, and like what Rich said, it's just you have stuff on the screen and you just get on with the program and just do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I just point out in the chat room, I think it's gone past now. Matthew Tyre said it says 18.00 hertz, so that's probably 18 kilohertz if it's done in sort of euro figures. So it's probably
I didn't read it as such, because if you look at the 0.001, that would make it 10 seconds, but then the 18.00 would make it 18 hertz.
Right.
So I think it's a misprint.
We need some clarification there. But anyway, you want to check that out. It's MTBLSM, which is www.mtbism.com, and it's the mechanism, and it's going to be about €650, and it looks actually like it could be a good solution if you're looking for a rack that has a bit more stuff going on in it. Right, I think at this point we'll just have a message from our friends at iZotope. This is Ozone 8, which is the mastering and processing plugin suite. Allows you to basically, it starts with the mastering assistant. The mastering assistant takes machine learning and also the content of your own audio, and then makes suggestions on what sort of processing you might want to do to get to the place at which you want your master to sound like. So it's actually a good starting point. Obviously you don't have to use that, but it's very intelligently done. You can also master your tone with tonal balance control, which gives you kind of visual representations of the 4 bands that the energy needs to be about within to again attain the sound that you're looking for. And lots of different presets, the ability to control other aspects of Ozone 8 or other instances of Ozone 8, and also Neutron 2 from within the same session. So if you're working on getting the master, you can fix a mix issue, or you can tweak something on a particular track which will change the overall balance and allow you to figure out what's going on. Lots of visual clues as to how to achieve the sound that you're after, which is also very handy, because I mean obviously just speakers, if you're an expert then great, but if you need some extra visual help, you can do things where you can compare tracks, check out the spectral content of them, and just essentially just tweak and pull and twist until you get to where you want to be. You can load up to 10 references from a folder, break it down into different sections, so you can say A, B, and you can get the gain slider to match the gain, so you get a much closer reference point. Spectral Shaper allows you to tweak the harshness and shrill, so you can kind of reduce particular annoying frequencies and just smooth out the mix. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do with Ozone. If you want to check it out, go to iZotope.com/ozone, and they have a 10-day free demo there. We also got a competition. Last week we asked you to tweet the hashtag Mastering Suite and Ozone 8, and we've got a winner in the form of @MartinRoxArt. So Martin ROX Art, that's the Twitter handle. If you want to get in touch, we'll ensure that you get your copy of Ozone 8 sent to you. And we got another competition this week. We're looking for the hashtag. This is on Twitter, I should point out. You need to tweet the hashtag intelligent mixing, which is one word, Ozone 8 another word, to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. So tweet the hashtag intelligent mixing and the hashtag Ozone 8 to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. And anyway, if you feel like it, use up those extra characters, send us a message, let us know how you're feeling, you know, whatever, you can put it in there. I know iZotope monitor that, so perhaps you don't want to be too rude about it or risque, but you know, you've got extra characters, use them up. Right, so that was a cool case. And oh yeah, look, we got another Softube, the Console1, which is something that's been going on for quite a while. They've now introduced Cubase integration.
Every major DAW on the market. Now, the next level of control is here. In Cubase 9.5 and above, vital DAW functions can be controlled right from the Console1 hardware. The new Console1 software allows the DAW track selection to be reflected in Console1 and vice versa. As always, the Console1 output volume and pan knobs can be used to control the corresponding settings in the Console1 software. But they can now also be switched over to control the pan knob.
Anyway, suffice to say, the deeper integration, I mean, Console1, as we've seen in the past, it's one of those things, it seems to be like a Marmite thing. Lots of people just absolutely dig it, because essentially you've got a channel strip and control in front of you, which for many people who perhaps aren't working with mixing desks and like a bit of hands-on, it really does kind of bring back a more physical relationship with the actual process of mixing. And as I say, I think it's about $499 US. Let me see, what was it? Yeah, $499. It comes with an SSL 4 e-channel, and then you can add all the various bundles. I think it also integrates with the Apollo stuff. I'll come to you first, Yoad. I don't know if you've tried Console1. I mean, you've got a console, so perhaps you probably wouldn't, but perhaps when you're working out of home, is this sort of thing that you like? I mean, is it... Oh, excuse me. Say again. I had your fader down. My mistake.
Sorry. I do like controlling stuff, controlling synths and stuff with my kind of custom-made controller. For everything else, I tend to use the mouse. But I had this idea, and I would like to challenge maybe someone who's kind of programming Arduino and stuff like that. I had this thought, on certain doors and certain plugins, when you hover above a knob, you can change it with a scroll, with a mouse scroll.
Yeah.
So why not make a controller? Because let me tell you what my problem is with controllers. When I use controllers, I tend to look at them, look at the screen, and use the mouse. So it's like three things that I have to worry about, rather than just the kind of natural thing of looking at the screen and changing stuff with the mouse. So, but if I had like one knob that when I would hover above a control on the screen would let me turn it with acceleration and all, that would be an ideal solution for me. So I don't know if anyone's watching who can program stuff like that. I know there's a problem because scroll is actually not a continuous control, but rather it's like almost like arrows, almost like page up and down. So it's a continuous. So if you use touch automation mode, then you can't use the scroll wheel while doing that. But I think it could be quite, I don't know, it's something that I would like to see. With regards to that hardware controller, it looks interesting. I'm not, like I said, I don't tend to use stuff like that because of the fact that I have to look at the screen, look at something else. Look, it's an extra kind of complex,
right. Okay, that's interesting. I think the idea with the Softube thing is you can select tracks and do it that way. But it's an interesting. I'm pretty sure we looked at something. I think Rich, you might have been on the show. Remember, it's like a trackpad type thing that enabled you to, when you're over a certain thing, a certain control, the trackpad would just allow you to swipe or have a relative. I forget what it was. It was gesture control over DAW parameters, and I can't remember what it is. But I don't know whether that. Have you seen the Console One? I mean, it's been around for a long time, and they reduced the price quite recently. So I mean, it seems to have legs, and like I say, people who use it.
I see it everywhere these days.
Oh, really?
A lot of people seem to have gotten them and really like the integration with the SSL console emulation that they provide. I had a funny moment talking about it with one of the members of our band, and I pointed out to him that Pete Townsend was part of the ad campaign for the Console1 controller. And he looked at me and he went, "Pete Townsend? He can't hear anything."
Yes, notoriously quite deaf.
Funny,
isn't it?
because it's sort of legendarily true, but it's kind of funny. Apparently, it's a really, really cool and fun thing. And even friends who I expected would have really been upset at not having a fader, which is sort of the biggest complaint about the thing, is you're running knobs for everything, including level, and you don't have even a fader to run your level on. And I know they've heard that because I've actually talked to them about it, and there may someday come to be a console too that has a fader. But in the meantime, nobody seems to be missing it, and everybody seems to like this thing.
It would make sense, wouldn't it? Just have a fader, a little bit on the end with just a single fader that would be active, or you could have it just be the master fader or the active channel fader. That would kind of make sense.
Can I add something to just that?
Sure.
Basically, I took a cap out of a mixer, and I glued it on top of the modulation wheel. And so that when I convert that to control number 7, I actually have a fader, which is like the old EMI desk, which kind of goes like that, and that's kind of does it.
That's an interesting idea. That's brilliant. What a great idea. Marc, I don't know. I mean, again, you we, like many of us, you've probably been through hundreds of controllers, and, they always promise so much. And then you always end up just sort of thinking, actually, I just want to reach for something and not have to spend half my life mapping stuff. And this kind of goes some way towards that, at least for mix control, right?
It might do. I mean, the fact it kind of marries up with all that universal audio stuff appeals to me, because I sort of got into that for a bit, and then now I don't have it anymore, and I'd like to have it back. But I've got an Ableton Push, so I have to really sing praises for, or actually I've got a Push 2, and my whole world, or coming into this whole world of music technology was with an Akai S1000. So I had a small screen in front of me and a couple of big knobs, and I could whiz around that whole software architecture really quickly using that. And the whole Push 2 ethos for me seems to have the same feel as an Akai S1000, except you've got more knobs. So if I click on an EQ in Ableton, in fact, I'll say that differently. If I go to an EQ in Ableton, because you don't ever have to touch the computer when you're using Push, it just comes up and it shows me graphical representations on a small screen of what I'm likely to be able to EQ and or whatever plugin I bring up. It gives me an intelligent representation of that and a whole load of knobs. So I don't know about this. I mean, I guess it's more specialist and more away from creation and more into mixing, perhaps.
Yeah,
so it might be useful for people who are mixing, but in terms of music creation and being able to get hands-on and being able to adjust things, Push 2 is where it's at for me. And for Yode, why don't you buy another mouse with a scroll thing on it, hit it with a hammer, take the scroll wheel out, glue a biro onto that, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, like I said, but the scroll is actually, it's not a continuous control. It's actually a bunch of up and down controls. So when you're in touch mode, it's unusable. But I want to show, if you can see it, I have the complete Akai, from back in the day. I have the beloved S1000.
And how's the finger grease on the cursor keys?
And you know that on the S3000, if you mess about with it for too long, it gives you a message, call Richard, with a phone number.
Really?
So someone kind of like. It must have been one of the programmers who put like an Easter egg in there. An Easter egg in there, which is kind of nice.
Wow, I wonder if Richard would ever. It's not you, Rich, is it?
Maybe it is.
You haven't had any random calls from
I'm going to die. Let's see if you pick up.
Go ahead, please. I'd love to speak to you. Yeah, I'm randomly calling people
No, but I think it has like 6 digits on the number, so it's like back.
It's not
back
a real
in the day.
Ah, right, okay.
No, I mean it was sometimes in the 80s, but probably not anymore.
Interesting. So I mean, but that's an interesting point. So it seems like Console 1 and Push 2 are both quite sort of definite sweet spots within their creative requirements. I mean, obviously Console 1, like I say, it's not an input device for playing notes and stuff. It's just for mixing and that side of things. And again, it's one of those things that you like the idea of. I think we had a look at one a while back, and Gaz found it very frustrating because he didn't want to have to put Console 1 across all of his DAW channels to be able to use it. And I think the integration means you don't necessarily have to do that, but I'd have to double check because it's been a while since we've had one in. But it's the sort of thing for when you're mixing, there is the ability to be able to just hold a knob and sort of look away and change the angle of where you're listening in the speakers sometimes gives you that extra perspective to kind of go, yeah, okay, I'm hearing where that is. I mean, maybe that's just psychoacoustic and not, but I think it makes a lot of sense. To be able to think
about it.
Yeah.
If you think about it, this what's this? Console 1 is $499, is it?
Yeah, but it comes with an SSL 4000G or E plugin as well.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, my Push 2 also does that whole thing about switching between different keys and different modes of playing, so I can quantize all of my scales on that. So kind of Push 2 does a little bit of Console 1 and the first thing we looked at, maybe.
Yeah, that's true.
Just a thought. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. Okay, well, if you want to check that out, you can get it on Cubase now, so there you go. Right. Oh yeah, here we go. Google are at it again with their artificial intelligence.
This is some of the with this idea. Every time we see new technology come along, artists take interesting bits of that technology and turn it into new ways of making music. From ancient instruments through to the 808 drum machine, transforming the technology into something of artistic merit. My name's Doug. I'm a research scientist on the Google Brain team, and I run a project called Magenta. We're a research group dedicated to understanding how to use machine learning in the space of the arts.
Right, it's quite a long video, but yeah, the Google Brain team. Imagine having that on your business card. That would make you kind of seem to be like probably one of the world's smartest people. But what they've done is they've created this thing called NSynth Super, and they've built themselves hardware. Essentially, what it does, and I think I've got this right, is it will analyze the input, the sonic fingerprint of instruments, and then apply them or morph between them. So it's very similar in many ways to the Hartman neuron, except obviously using more neural networking and what have you. So it's not trying to compose, it's trying to compose sound. And what they did is they built themselves a piece of hardware, which is this thing here, which is the NSynth Super. You can get all the design documents and the kind of, you know, the 3D printer things and what have you. You can build it yourself. But I think what's interesting, there's two things that are interesting about this. One, that it's another crack at that, what essentially sounds like crossfading, because when you move between those sounds, it sort of morphs between the sounds. But also the fact that Google are kind of taking the idea of synthesis, you know, and letting their, what must be an extremely expensive research team work on that, which is great. I don't know, what do you think, Rich? Do you think Google will be releasing a synth soon?
Looks like they're thinking about, or somebody's thinking about using that technology to do so. And it's hard for me to comment on this product without actually physically interacting with it and hearing it for myself, because quite honestly, the demo was almost stunningly underwhelming to me.
Yes.
But, and this idea, first of all, the whole thing is loaded with, you have to like weed through all of this market speak that I've been listening to for 35 years about how this is going to change the way we make music and how it's going to change the way sounds are created. And all these wonderful new sounds are going to be possible that were never possible before, because now you can morph the attack of a trumpet onto the body of a guitar that then plays the sustain of a harp or whatever. You know, it's, from Missouri, as we say, the show me state. I'm looking forward to hearing somebody show me some magnificent results on this thing, because I ain't heard it yet, but it might be there.
It might be there. And it is.
Agree.
It does sound a bit like that whole kind of crossfade thing, which the Neuron was doing amazing things under the hood, but it sounded just like crossfade. And we've talked about this before. Johan, you said you completely agree, so I'm guessing you completely agree.
Exactly. So you can move on. No, but I mean, what I mean is that this device, it resembles a physical modeling kind of XY controller, which takes the qualities for different for strumming, for this and kind of combines them together. I like to, you know, the sculpture plugin from Imagic, from Logic, comes to mind, which is a beautiful synthesizer, physical modeling synthesizer. I, like Rich said, you know, it looks nice. It has kind of a rainbow kind of colored screen and stuff like that. What else? I haven't. It sounds like a kind of mediocre synth. So I don't want to diss it before I kind of know more about it. But I just didn't get into reading all the stuff that you know. So I'm looking for proof.
Yeah, I wonder, because I mean, the Brain team, obviously smart boffins, and they must have liaised with a few musicians to be able to get the stuff in there. But maybe they're kind of, they weren't as creatively taxing the system as perhaps some other individuals who might have had something to put in. Rich, you look like you want to come in there.
Instrument design is a science and an art. And I don't care what kind of degrees, and I don't care how many times they use the words neural and network in a sentence. If it doesn't sound, feel, and operate musically as an instrument,
it's pointless,
then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And
I disagree.
they might get there, and they may know far more than is apparent from that video, and it may actually be really, really, really cool. But on the other hand,
I thought it was cool.
Okay, Mark, go. And
I thought it was cool. Because it reminds me a little bit. I've got a piece of software called ImageLine Morpheus, which is part of the Fruity Loop software, but it also works as a standalone or as an AU or a VST. And it analyzes sounds, and then you put 4 sounds in different corners, and then you can morph between those sounds. So if it goes any way to work the way that does, but this looks like it does and does it slightly better, it could be really cool. And I listened to all of those. There's somewhere, I don't think it's on the page that you sent the link for, but if you follow some of these links, they've got all these kind of before and after. So the sound of something before they analyzed it, and then the sound after, and it gets it so wrong that it gets it wrong in an interesting way. So there's an example of someone saying something like hi there or hello there or something, and then the resynthesized version is this really strange sort of robotic thing. So I think as an effect, or for creating sounds that haven't been created yet, that it could be quite a useful thing, in the same way that the whole auto-tune and retuning thing has now become a thing with vocalists after Cher kind of did that in a very affected way. I think it has capability of creating something as a musical effect rather than trying to replace a musical instrument. And if it becomes a new musical effect or a new musical instrument in its own right, simply because it doesn't do things as well as we expect it to, then I think it could be a cool thing.
That's acceptable, I guess. Yeah, well, you can download all the stuff yourself. I was just looking because I recall we did a review of, actually Ben Crosland did a review of BT Phobos, which is similar in the way that it physical models, or it resonates or transforms sounds through I'm trying to think, convolution engine. So you can take one sound and convolute it through another sound and through another sound, and then more, which is, I mean, it's massively CPU intensive, but musically it kind of it's more interesting. It seems to yield some very interesting and kind of weird results, rather than this kind hey, look,
that's where
it's a snare, it's a flute.
Synth sounds that we hear and things, you know, like the THX Dolby sound, those kind of sounds that come from cross morphing these things and just creating these massive senses of space. I think it could be good for making those sorts of things if it works in the way that I think it's going to work.
Yeah, well, we don't know how much work is involved in analyzing. He's not muted. No, he's just
no, I'm not. I'm just waiting my turn.
I thought he was just. I thought he was ready to say something. He was coming back with something. Then I thought. But
I forgot my train of thought. Actually, you go, Rich.
I'm sorry, Nick.
That's all right. No problem.
Well, it just seems to me that there's a glut of. I mean, every day my email box is filling with another software company's version of what Marc has just described. Some version of what NI called Rise and Hit, or I mean, it's all this soundtrack-oriented sound generation machines.
Mm-hmm.
I get like 3 of them per day, it seems. Literally in my mailbox every day. Another one from another company that's got some kind of like impact sounds and some kind of backwards combined with forwards getting you there.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and I think because making that stuff is complicated, so I suppose the idea, I mean, there are 2 routes on there, because, I mean, if you talk to someone like Ty, who is living and breathing the kind of media composing thing and has to do like 17 cues a day or whatever, some ludicrous amount of things, they don't have time to sit there and kind of create these beautiful soundscapes for every single thing. So there's 2 routes. You do that, or you buy a library and use it before anybody else has, so that you can actually sort of claim that as oh yeah, that guy did that amazing stuff. But it may well be that, you know, the libraries and these instruments help create that sound and define it, but you're still making the creative choices of what to use and where, and deciding the interpretation. So it's a sort of valid approach, but it's the sort of thing that tends to happen for people who don't have time to build those amazing sounds. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, Yard. I mean, you know, I'm sure you'd love nothing more than to be able to sit there and come up with these amazing notes that you could use once.
Well, I would like to say one thing from a guy who's been involved in R&D of audio products for the past 20 years, and rather than a music producer and mixer. When it comes to kind of morphing between sounds, what you usually you have several approaches to that. One is basically formant morphing, where you take, which is like a vocoder, where you take the formant kind of frames from one sound and apply them to a different sound source, and this creates a vocoder. Now, the more usually when you apply things like that, like morphing, you get something, like Marc said, you get something that sounds like a vocoder, because there's no kind of way around it. The other way of dealing with something like that is, like was mentioned, is convolution. Now, the holy grail with convolution, basically, once you convolve a sound source with a single sample impulse, you create the identical, you replicate the identical source. Now, and that includes, so that will cancel out. So that's an optimal kind of result. The further you get while convolving one sound with from an absolute impulse, while a single sample, you get the transients completely smeared. So basically, convolving two signals will create very interesting results, but it will stay in the kind of soundscape.
Because you don't
result.
get that, right? Okay, you get
So you can convolve a snare drum with a sine wave or this and that, but you will always get something which is very kind of elusive and without punch. The holy grail is to get something with a punch and presence, and that's why I think all those products tend to be like soundscape and atmosphere and things like that.
So we need to get some FM synthesis in there. If we mash some FM synthesis
something
on the front
like
of convolution,
but FM is very single kind of dimensional.
No, what I'm thinking, like the Roland D50, like the LA synthesis, where they had the attack partial and then they had the sustain partial. You could have the attack as FM,
in a way,
which
but
was completely
in a way, but I think that these,
and then the convolution to get your sustain.
Right.
Kind of, but I think that these days,
I don't know. I mean, I can't program it, but someone will.
These days people expect to have something which is a little bit more sophisticated than a PCM attack with a synthesized traditional kind of subtractive synthesis. So there's still a lot. Like what?
Fulcon, UVI Fulcon does some of that stuff actually,
but it's still kind of very much PCI. It's still very much PCM based. The holy grail, it takes a lot of computing power, a lot of processing power. It takes a lot of algorithm work. We're still quite a long way from that. I know that every kind of credible and serious algorithm company or brand is trying to work on these things, and I think we're still quite a long way to go, but it will be I can say that it's going to be very interesting what will happen in that kind of territory in the next 5 years.
Right, I guess it's probably down to computing power to a degree. That's very interesting. I hadn't really that explains kind of a lot about these things. Anyway, so I think probably this feels like it might be a good time to wrap things up, because we have got some other. So, did you want actually before we do that, Marc? Did you want to quickly have a look at the Roland TR-808 that's been added to the cloud? Let's have a look. Where's that? Legendary. Here we go.
I'm quite surprised, because I knew Roland were doing this this subscription-based thing, but I'm really surprised by the price. Actually, it just seems to me that for a year to pay £185 and to get everything, that seems like a really good deal.
Interesting. I should quickly. Can I just quickly put? Can I put this up quickly? Sorry, this is they announced the TR-8 rhythm composer. I mean, this seems to be what they're doing, because the all the IRA stuff is obviously ACB, which is code based. So anything that they release for ACB, they can basically make in software. So they're releasing them concurrently, and their system is you pay, I think it's $20 a month, and you get access to all of it. And now that they've built this up, and when it started, it perhaps didn't have enough to kind of make it seem to warrant it, but now it does. Sorry, I just wanted to put that in a position, Mark, so you give it some context.
Year after year, I feel like I paid several £100s for a program called Logic, and then they turned it into Logic Audio, and I paid several £100s for that. A couple of years later, I paid several £100s for an upgrade to version 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 even was very expensive, the upgrade to that. And then suddenly they made it really cheap, which kind of broke that model, because Pro X is only like £130 or something. But with everything else, like Pro Tools, I did subscribe to that for a while. It seems every time you buy something, the computer manufacturer changes the operating system, your dongle changes in the back, you have to throw it in the bin, so all your hardware is nonsense. And it just seems I'm buying all this stuff anyway over a period of time. So if I was just paying a subscription of £185 a year, I almost feel like I would pay less money doing that than I have been just by buying the software and buying into the upgrade path. So it seems, I don't know, it just looks good to me.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because there's a real reticence to kind of to go for that model. Rich, I don't know. There's the sense, in the same way that we like to own the stuff that we use, but in fact, it kind of almost makes sense, like leasing a car, I suppose, or you pay a rental and then the car breaks down, they fix it or whatever. It's that sort of, you don't then have to worry about that sort of side of things. So maybe it's going to make more sense, this model, eventually.
Maybe. Certainly they think it will, and they see that as their financial future in a time where selling things on a one-off basis is a lot more difficult than it used to be. And pretty much everybody is trying to get you to sign up for their subscription-based software service and not be selling you individual copies of pieces of software. I guess everybody's looking. Subscription services have pervaded our lives since my childhood in every aspect. And It seems to be the holy grail of money making in this, in our sort of Western, quote unquote, democratic economies, is to do this. And I don't know. I don't feel, for example, I understand Marc's point about this. And in fact, if you were to miss and want to use Roland gear a lot over the course of a year, $215 to do it is not a tremendous amount of money. And I get that. And that's not a bad thing either. On the other hand, I guess I have to constantly commit whatever I'm using, because there's going to come a year where I don't have that, and I'm going to want to hear that sound.
Yeah, that's the
I suppose so. Yeah,
you're not going to be able to change it after a certain point without rebuying it, because you don't own it. And I realize you don't own the software you think you own anyway, and it's just a license to use it and all that. But the point is, for the amount of Roland synths that I actually miss using bad enough to want to pay for them, I can just go to UVI and buy their samples and use them when I need them. It's not that big a deal to me to be turning those particular knobs when I'm doing synthesis. It could be somebody else's knobs, if you'll pardon the expression.
Yeah, I get that. I know, Yoad, obviously you're involved with Wave, so you have a kind of software developer's head on this, but it's an what Marc says does make a certain amount of sense, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Rich.
Absolutely. I think that as a user, this time, I would say that, that basically what Roland offer is a theoretical value of £4,000 for £200 a year, or $4,000 or whatever, which is all well and good. But what I would like to see is something where I get this value, but from different manufacturers. So I get to pick and choose which products I want to use. I don't necessarily need £4,000 worth of £4,000. I know that Splice are doing something similar. I think it's early days.
Plugin
Alliance.
But Plugin Alliance are, they don't offer. So what I would like to see is basically a distributor who can get you basically like Amazon, but on a subscription basis.
So it's like Netflix, whatever you want.
But Netflix is limited in content because they actually source the content.
But that's
I would like it to be transparent. I would like to say, okay, I want to buy or rent $4,000 worth of plugins, but I want to choose which ones I would like to pay for, and then I'm happy to pay £200 a year or $200 or whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody's going to figure that out, and it would make sense. And that maybe that's when it starts to get interesting. But you sort of have to have everybody, again, you need to reach critical mass for that sort of whole thing to work. And, Roland, with the Roland thing, you're paying for their instruments. You're not getting like a load of effects processing and compressors and stuff. You're just getting that. So I can see, and again, it's the same as if you say you're renting, you pay a subscription to cable. You can watch a load of channels from a lot of different people. Some of them might be Sky, who make their own stuff. Some of them might be licensed in, like whatever, however it works. And there's that. But then ultimately you still, in most cases, unless you pay the real top drawer subscription, you don't get exactly what you want. You don't get the a la carte thing, and that's something that that's all part of the upsell, isn't it? I suppose.
Am I right in saying with the Roland thing, you get everything? That's what it says, and
everything they make, yeah,
and then you get everything that they bring out in the future as well. So it sort of seems, I don't know, it just seems more exciting somehow.
Yeah, but I agree with that. But then it's whatever it is, $20 a month or something like that. Yeah. But just for the Roland thing, what about all my processing things, like all the plugins, SSL emulations, blah blah blah, that I need for mixing? What about all the sample libraries? I know that they do some of that, So if I want to cover all these bases, I would pay something more like, I don't know, $300 a month rather than $20, which makes it a whole different ball game. And I don't need all their kind of repertoire, all their lexicon of
but then you get into that. But hold on, Mark. But then you get into the if I'm a developer and my stuff is under an umbrella, it's like, how do I know I'm going to get paid? How do I get paid? Because I can't sell a thing. I can only sell a bigger license.
So, there are ways to take it. Exactly. Absolutely. Exactly. There are ways to that's not a problem. Once you get the consumer to pay, there are ways of distributing the money, the royalties, or the
however it works. Well, hopefully, yeah.
But sorry, Mark, I have several pieces of software that I've bought, and then to continue to use them I have to pay, which annoys me actually. And you probably know which particular software brand that is.
Yeah.
That I've bought many times, and now I have to pay a service contract on top of that. But Roland are saying, if you pay this, you just get it. Whereas some things I've got don't run anymore that I've bought, and it just, I don't know. Sorry, I've got to be very careful how I word this, I think. But
I understand.
You know what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know.
How many Roland synths are you going to use a year? If you use a lot, then it's a great thing.
The only thing is, I did just buy the Arturia Jupiter 8 version 3. I just upgraded to that. So do I need Roland's one? Is it better?
Well, in theory,
I'll bet it's different.
It should be.
In theory, it ought to be better, yeah. Like every Jupiter 8 on the planet, the real analog ones, every single one of them sounds completely different, right? So we could work on that theory.
Well, it sounds like we've opened a bit of a can of worms here. Maybe we should exit gracefully, Control-Alt-Delete, and wrap things up for this show. But thank you very much. That was a very interesting aspect of the discussion. I'm glad we did bring that up in the end. So, Marc, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on, and it looks like your system is working there, and I hope you haven't got a queue of people who've broken their bottom E and are just about to go on stage.
I have had a few random people looking very bewildered by this because they're like, he's in the shop, but he won't open the door. Retail is the weirdest thing. People think they have the right to just stumble into your space full blast and do anything they want in here. They treat it like a public space. And it's taken me a long time to get used to the fact that people do that. And and they've been annoyed that my door's been closed. So I apologize if you've come to my door trying to get in, but I was doing this. So you'll have to come back. I'm sure they'll come back later. That's in Glastonbury High Street. Thank you very much, Marc, for joining us. It's been a pleasure, as ever. And also, thank you, Yoad Novo. Thank you very much for joining us too. Some very interesting perspectives on a lot of those subjects. I hope the rest of your week will be enjoyable and you've got plenty to do and gainfully employed and all of those things.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
And Rich, of course, I guess we won't see you for a little while unless you're still around. If you're going to be back in the studio or on the road, I forget which one comes first. Oh, on the road, I think, isn't it?
A week from today, I'll be in London playing the Royal Albert Hall. And then the following week, I'll be in Australia. So we'll see what comes. But thanks, as always, for the great conversation. And I wanted to say hi to Yoad's mom and say I hope you enjoyed the show.
I think she actually texted me that she dropped out by now. She doesn't understand a thing, and she's watching the news. So
fair enough. I suppose that's what you
tell her I said hello, please.
Yeah, we'll give her. Well, there's no point in giving her away because she's not here anymore. Anyway, thank you, Rich. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Don't forget, if you want to enter the competition to win iZotope's Ozone 8, we're looking for a Twitter tweet, which is the hashtag Intelligent Mixing and the hashtag Ozone 8 to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. That's it for this week. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll all see you next time. We'll give you a wave and then I'll end the show. Thanks very much, folks. See you next time.